the line? Christina. Moving down, Legislative Branch, Office of the Speaker, and Seth Damon. Staff, or any staff members on the line?
Good afternoon, Chair. This is Donovan.
Hello, Donovan. Thank you for being with us. Office of the President and Vice President, Nomination Office of the President, Jonathan is, or Vice President Myron Lizer. Staff, are you on the line?
Good afternoon, Chairman. This is Minor Associate with OPVP.
Thank you again, Lanchinanta, for being on the line with us. Do we have the Office, Nomination Office of Controller on the line?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. This is Robert Woolley from the Office of the Controller, and the Acting Controller should be on here shortly, sir.
Thank you, Robert Woolley. Thank you for being on the line. Nomination Office of Management and Budget. Nomination Office of Management and Budget. Okay, with that, are there staff members from different programs that are still on the line that do understand that the Division of Dine Education is on the line? Ms. Ghani and her staff. Is there any other staff members on the line? All right, then, we'll move forward. Moss Adams, representatives.
Yes, Moss Adams, partner Tasha Rep, and senior manager Ryan Lukemeyer are on the line.
Okay, thank you for that. And let's run down to the next item on our agenda, which is review and approval of the agenda. If you would read the proposed agenda into the record for us.
Thank you, Chair Himio and members of the Budget and Finance Committee. This is your proposed agenda of the Budget and Finance Committee of the Navajo Nation Council, August 25, 2021. Special meeting. Presiding is Jamie Himio, Chairperson, Raymond Smith, Junior Vice Chairperson, place via teleconference, Window Rock, Navajo Nation, Arizona. 1, call the meeting to order. The roll call, the invocation. 2, recognize guests and visiting officials. 3, review and adopt the agenda. 4, review and adopt the journal. None. 5, receive reports. None. 6, old business. None. 7, new business. A, legislation number 0169-21. An action relating to budget and finance and Navajo committees and Navajo Nation Council, accepting the audit report for Moss Adams on the basic financial statements of the Navajo Nation for fiscal year 2020, sponsored by Raymond Smith Jr., Council Delegate. 8, close of the session, written announcements, adjournment. The next regular meeting is September 7th, 2021.
Thank you, Peggy, for that reading of our agenda. Is there a motion, Budget and Finance Committee, to accept the agenda as read?
Delegate Yellowhair.
Okay, did I hear Delegate Elmer P. DeGay?
Vote.
Elmer P. DeGay, motion, second by Delegate Jimmy Yellowhair. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I can see that. Motion by Delegate Elmer P. DeGay and second by Delegate Jimmy Yellowhair. We do have a motion and second, Snunta. With that, any comments, questions on the proposed agenda?
Chairman Henio, this is Delegate Crotty.
Shannon, Delegate Emerick Crotty, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask, as the sponsor, did you want to add the legislation regarding the ARPA process for Navajo Nation, or I'm not sure the plan was to have a work session, a discussion, but I do know that we need to move forward on that process. So if you could make that recommendation, thank you, Chair.
I had an answer for that. I believe that we, as a committee, today is sort of rushed, and we still have to conduct the other business. And I like to have a good sit down with all the committee members, and I think that then we could do is a work session in the morning, and then a special meeting in the afternoon, and then we can move on that. If that's okay with the Budget and Finance Committee.
Chair Henio, this is Peggy. Can I speak?
Yes, Chair Henio, then if I could motion to add discussion on the agenda to schedule that work session and special meeting. Thank you, Chair, if I'm in order.
Thank you. Amendment number 1, action item B 7B, which would be discussion on scheduling a work session and a special meeting. Amendment number 1, motion by Delegate Amber Crotty. Is there a second?
Elmer PBK. Second.
Second by Shannon. Delegate Elmer PBK. Gasheen, there is a motion and a second on amendment number 1. Any questions, comments? Peggy, do you have a comment?
That's what I was going to suggest, Chair, was to put that on the agenda, scheduling a work session and a special meeting. So I'm okay.
Thank you. Gasheen, if there's no further comments, questions on this amendment number 1, Ramona, if you would lead us in a roll call vote.
Chairman, roll call vote for amendment number 1. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote? Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. Honorable Amber Crotty, how do you vote?
Shut it, Delegate Amber Crotty, and I vote green. Thank you.
Thank you, Shadeja. Honorable Amber Crotty votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote?
I'll vote.
I'm sorry, Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, I didn't get your vote.
I'll vote green.
Thank you.
I'll
Honorable
vote green.
Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Elmer P. Begay votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote? Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote?
Delegate Brown votes green.
Thank you. Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes green. Chairman, we have 4 members in the affirmative, 0 opposing, Chairman not voting, and 1 member excused. Honorable Chairman?
The Vice Chair, voting green. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes green. Chairman, we have 5 members voting in the affirmative, 0 opposing, Chairman not voting. Chairman?
Thank you for that roll call vote. We do have a due pass for amendment number 1. 5 in favor, 0 opposed, Chair not voting. With this, back to the main motion. Budget and Finance Committee, are there any further questions, comments? Roll call vote to accept the agenda as read with 1 amendment is to add a new action item to the business scheduling a work session and a special meeting. With this, Ramona, if you would lead us in the roll call vote.
Sure, Chairman, roll call vote on the main motion. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote? Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote?
I vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Honorable Amber Kenneth-Bott-Carty, how do you vote?
Shadow Delegate Amber Kenneth-Bott-Carty, and I vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Amber Kenneth-Bott-Carty votes green. Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Elmer P. Begay votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote? Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote? Chairman, we have 4 members voting in the affirmative, 0 opposing, 1 member not voting. Chairman.
Delegate Brown votes green also.
Thank you. Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes green. Chairman, you have 5 members voting in the affirmative, 0 opposing, and Chairman not voting. Chairman.
Christina, thank you for that roll call vote. We do have an agenda before us. 5 in favor, 0 opposed, Chair not voting. Let's move forward on our agenda. Next item on our agenda is review and adopt journals. There's none. Next item is receive reports. There is none. Next item is old business. There is none. Next item is new business. Item A, legislation 0169-21. Peggy, if you would read that into the record for us, please. Peggy, please read the legislation into the record.
Yes, Chair. I just emailed that to all of the committee members. If you haven't received my previous email on this, legislation number 0169-21 is a proposed Navajo Nation Council resolution, and it's assigned to Budget and Finance Committee, thence Nabagia Committee, thence Navajo Nation Council, 24th Navajo Nation Council, 3rd year 2021, introduced by Raymond Smith Jr. Sponsor tracking number 169-21, an action relating to Budget and Finance and Nabagia Committees and Navajo Nation Council accepting the audit report of Moss Adams on the basic financial statements of the Navajo Nation for fiscal year 2020. And this has been read into the record. The financial statement for the draft financial statement is attached for your review. And then the internet public review documents shows no comments on the first report. It was Chair Hinio.
Thank you for that reading. And with this, is there a motion to accept this resolution as read?
Delegate Brown on motion.
Motion by Delegate Nathaniel Brown. Second?
Yellowhair.
Second by Delegate Jimmy Yellowhair. With that, we do have a motion and second on this legislation. With this, Shinada, Vice Chair Raymond Smith Jr., you have the floor to introduce the legislation to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Thank you, Shananda. Thank you, Budget and Finance Committee members and those that are listening on this afternoon. Yes, this legislation is imperative to pass, and it will be heard tomorrow on Council regarding the audit. I have my agent, Elizabeth Begay, with us this afternoon on the legislation regarding the audit. And Shinanda Donofinigi, I'd like to know if my agent's on board. Ms. Elizabeth Begay, are you with us this afternoon? Chair Henyo, this is imperative that we need OOC as the agent for this legislation. Could we have Peggy get a hold of my agent. I did notify the agent through my LDA, and now that we're here at this point in time, it is imperative that we have her on board for this, any questioning on the legislation.
Okay. Vice Chair, so I did call out for Office of Navajo Nation Controller. Mr. Rob Willie is on the line for representing the Office of the Controller.
Chair Henio. This is Peggy.
Vice Chair Smith, Mr. Rob Willie is on the line for the Office of the Controller. Would that be sufficient, or do you need Mr. Begay?
That'd be sufficient, Chair. One of the agents from Office of Controller. Therefore, thank you, Chair. Appreciate that.
Appreciate that. Mr. Willie, are you on the line?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay.
This is Robert Willie from the Controller's Office. I did
Thank
notify Elizabeth, and I'm not sure if she's going to jump on, but this is the FY 2020 audit that is going to be presented to you by the Moss Adams Group. The Moss Adams audit firm was the one that conducted the audit. It is for FY 2020. And I'm not sure. I believe I heard Ryan on the line earlier and Tasha Rep. So they do have a presentation. I'm not sure if Peggy had sent that out or not. But that's their introduction. If you have any questions, I guess we can direct them towards them at this point in time. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Vice Chair and members of the Budget and Finance Committee.
Thank you. Peggy?
Chair Henio, I will forward that audit presentation by Mr. Lukemeyer.
Okay, so it'll be emailing out right now then? Okay, back to Vice Chair Smith. You still have the floor. You can call upon your agents as you please to complete your presentation. You do have Mr. Rob Willie on the line, and also Moss Adams has also identified themselves to be on the line. You have the floor, Vice Chair Smith.
Point of privilege, Delegate Crotty.
Hold on, point of privilege. Delegate Amber Knesswat-Crotty.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we did receive this report in executive information that's provided in this legislation that's available for the public. I just need to know in terms of understanding either the changes or updates from this audit report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you for that point. Back to Peggy. If you would help with the response, has there been any changes since we last heard this report?
Chair Henio, I believe the question should be responded to by Moss Adams. We do have a draft audit report that was as an exhibit to the legislation, but we haven't received the finalized copy of the report by email or otherwise. I've just seen and I've forwarded the PowerPoint that Moss Adams presented last time.
Thank you for that guidance, Peggy. With this, back to Vice Chair Smith and to Moss Adams. Point of privilege question is, has there been any changes since we last met? So Vice Chair Smith, to your agent.
Well, thank you, Chair Henio, and also Honorable Crotty and committee members of the Budget Finance Committee. That is a good question. However, at this point in time, I'm not aware of any changes personally, but I sure would like to have my agent respond to that since they were doing the audit for the Navajo Nation. Moss Adams, are you available?
Yes, sir, Mr. Smith. This is Ryan Lukemeyer from Moss Adams. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, can hear you perfectly.
Okay.
There was a question posed. Could you provide that answer? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so the audit was finalized late yesterday afternoon. And right now the final reports and entire package is going through our word processing to finalize for distribution, and that'll be available at the end of today. The only changes compared to the draft version that we discussed previously in a work session was on finding 2020-001 regarding the nation's grants receivable account. There was an amount that we discussed during the work session where we identified a projected possible misstatement to that account of over $2 million. And as a result of additional follow-up by OOC, we've actually found that dollar amount is included, is actually $701,000. And then the other change was a last minute issue with not receiving some information regarding the nation's use of the CRF funds. There was another finding added as a result of that, 2020-009, that will be part of the final package. And that was simply the Treasury guidelines have specific requirements about those employees where we were continuing to pay them while while working from home. And in some cases, some employees were actually working and received administrative leave through the CRF, which was not allowable. And so those are the only two updates to the final audit.
This is also Tasha Rep from Moss Adams. I would also add that those updated findings are included in the draft version that was attached to the legislation, but they were not discussed, or they were revised after the working session with the Budget and Finance Committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that response to the question. Back to Budget and Finance, Delegate Amber Sakari, does that response help you with your point of privilege?
Chair Henio, the controller is also on the call, just note.
Thank you. Back to Delegate Amber Sakari. Are you still there?
Yes, I had to call back in. Thank you. I appreciate the update, and I have no further questions. I'm ready to vote. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Before we move forward with the presentation, on the main motion, are there any questions on the main motion for the Moss Adams audit report? Are there any questions? If there are no questions, we can call for the question on the main motion.
Delegate Yeller. This is Delegate Yeller here, Chairman.
Do you have questions?
Yes. I have a question.
With that, we'll defer the 20 minutes to Vice Chair Smith. You do have Moss Adams on the line, and we do have the Acting Controller, Ms. Elizabeth Begay, also on the line. Ms. Begay, are you on the line?
Yes, Chair Henio, I'm on the line. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So with that, Vice Chair, you have the floor. You have your 20 minutes to begin now.
Okay, Chair Henio and Budget Finance Committee members of the Navajo Nation 24th Council and those that are listening, thank you for my agents being here this afternoon. This is tracking number, legislation number 0169-21. And an action related to the BNF and MPIA, and final authority is Navajo Nation Council, which would be accepting the audit that was conducted, and it's an independent audit for the fiscal year of 2020, and in line with the behalf of the Navajo Nation budget procedures that need to adopt this legislation in order to have a comprehensive budget. That's why we're having this meeting.
Which one would you recommend?
Therefore, Moss Adams is an independent auditor, prepared the audit report, and we had a work session on behalf of the draft, and there was some changes that were mentioned before opening statement. Therefore, Shenandoah, this legislation is here before us and favorable to vote on it. And we did have a work session, and there was questions posed, and the work session was provided by the auditor, Moss Adams, and also the Office of Controller, Mrs. Begay. I do have my agents with me, Ms. Begay, and also Moss Adams, and also Mr. Rob Willie with me this afternoon. And no further introduction on this, but I'd like to go ahead and give the floor to our controller to speak a little bit on this behalf and the procedures of the audit and how we're going to move forward, and then give a couple minutes to Moss Adams after the Office of Controller does give a presentation on this legislation and moving forward. This will be going to Nabukia tomorrow, and then council in the afternoon. There's enough signatures for this audit, so that's why we're moving forward on this, and all this work that we're doing. This is hand in hand here. Without this, we can't move forward. So look favorably for BNF to move this and vote on it positively, and vote on it in Nabukia and also in the Navajo Nation Council. Therefore, I'd like to turn the floor over to our acting controller, Ms. Elizabeth Begay. You have the floor for this time being. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and Chair Hinio and Budget and Finance Committee. We met with Moss Adams. We had an exit meeting to go over the findings, and we had our work session with the Budget and Finance Committee, and we followed the required standard procedures in issuing this report. So I request the committee to approve the report so that we will be in compliance with the Navajo Nation law before we hold the Navajo Nation Council budget hearing for FY 2022. So therefore, I request the committee's support for this legislation to accept the audit of the Navajo Nation financial statement by our external auditors, Moss Adams. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Acting Controller Elizabeth Begay. At this point in time, I'd like to give the floor to Moss Adams for a brief introduction, and also the work that was performed and the audit that was provided here, and the drafting of it, and the now we have the legislation here in front of Budget and Finance. Moss Adams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Delegate Smith. Chairman Hanio, delegate members of the Budget and Finance Committee, we are happy to present to you today the final results of our audit for the year ended September 30, 2020. As we indicated in our working session, I will try to keep this brief and not repeat a lot of what we did in that session. But at a high level, I'm happy to report that based on the audit work that we performed, we are issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on the nation's financial statements, which means that we believe that the audit work we performed substantiates that the financial statements are materially correct in accordance with the nation's basis of accounting. You'll recall that the nation's basis of accounting is an other comprehensive basis of accounting, the Navajo Nation budgetary basis of accounting, which is similar to generally accepted audit principles with some adjustments related to some unique Navajo Nation revenue recognition areas. We, as Ryan indicated earlier in his comments, we obtained the final elements to complete the audit yesterday. So our audit reports will be dated as of August 24th and should be released to the nation later today to distribute. I also would like to remind the committee that although this set of audited financial statements is being issued in August, which is not the typical timeframe for the issuance of the nation's financial statements, that the nation is still in compliance with all external reporting requirements necessary for the audited financial statements. Primarily two areas of consideration, one being the federal government's single audit deadline. Normally that due date is June 30th, but due to the COVID-19 public health emergency, the federal government extended that due date to December 31st of 2021 this year. So you are still well in advance of the federal government single audit deadline. Additionally, as a result of the nation's bonds, you have a requirement to provide the nation's financial statements to your bondholders, typically due June 30th. But the bond covenants do allow for a 60-day extension to cure. So as long as the financial statements are issued prior to August 29th, 2021, you are still in compliance with those bond covenants considering that 60-day cure period. I also want to take this opportunity to thank OOC, OMB, and all of the programs that provided us information during the course of the audit. As you're aware, we were necessitated to perform a significant portion of our audit procedures remotely this year due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. And although that changed the audit process a little bit, your employees and team members and management were very responsive to our audit requests throughout the audit, and we very much appreciate the responses that we got. The financial statements that we issue 3 separate reports on the nation's financial statements. So the first is the opinion on the financial statements themselves, which, as I indicated, was a clean or unmodified opinion. We are also required to perform procedures and issue reports relative to the nation's grant compliance. That results in 2 audit reports issued by Moss Adams. One, an audit report in accordance with government auditing standards that is looking at internal controls and compliance relative to the nation's financial statements as a whole, and a separate report over compliance with federal grant requirements under the uniform guidance, where we are required to select certain federal grant programs and test elements of compliance. I am going to hand it over to my colleague, Ryan Lukemeyer, to go over the results of the single audit.
Thank you, Tasha, and thank you, Vice Chairman Smith. Just real quickly, I want to emphasize what Tasha mentioned. your entire team at the nation that was involved in this process. The audit is significant. There's a lot of involvement from everybody, and I want to indicate how much we appreciate the level of attention that was dedicated to getting this audit to this point. So again, thank you for your team's assistance with this. We do, as part of the federal government's requirements for the nation to conduct this, what we call a single audit, we do follow those requirements. And as a result, we had to look at 15 what we call major programs of how the nation spent various portions of the federal grant funds. As a result of that testing, we did have 9 findings to report this year. I know we covered a lot of these obviously in detail during the work session, but I'd like to summarize now real quick here. 2 of the findings, finding number 1 and finding number 2, really are globally impacting the nation. And so they're not necessarily specific to federal programs, but in the case of the first finding, regarding certain account balances for recognizing grants receivables from the federal agencies, amounts weren't always reported appropriately. So we have a finding there. The second finding was just overall with the nation's IT information technology department, there were some procedural concerns and best practices that really the IT department really should implement to ensure that the risk of theft and abuse and abuse of the system is reduced. And then finding 3 was really on the nation's special diabetes program, and it has been continued finding over the eligibility for the participants. In a lot of cases, or about 15 of 25 of the cases that we reviewed, enrollment status residency verification that was required per federal rules wasn't included. And then finding 4 was over the nation's food distribution program, which has been a repeated finding in the last few years. There's a need to ensure that participants that are utilizing the food distribution program are not also utilizing similar programs of the state. And there's a process that's in place that's not occurring on a routine or a monthly basis. And so that was a repeated finding. Finding 5 over the nation's aid to tribal government program. There were certain eligibility requirements over a new program for providing burial assistance to COVID-19 family members that lost their life. The nation has provided this program during the year to provide to those families, but the application process isn't always followed to ensure compliance with those policies. Finding 6 was on the nation's child care development program as well. There's certain earmarking requirements, which is essentially that you can't exceed a certain level of administrative costs that are charged to that program. However, during the year, that threshold was exceeded. And then finding 7 was on the nation's Services to Indian Children, Elderly, and Families program. We did have another eligibility finding there where participant files didn't always include the proper information to show how benefits were calculated for that program. And then finding 8 was on the Water Resources program. Davis-Bacon requires that, the Davis-Bacon Act requires that for certain construction projects, that those employees that are working on that program are paid wages that are fair and reasonable within that community. There wasn't necessarily concerns there. It's just that the program was not administering that and verifying compliance with that Davis-Bacon Act during the time of the construction project. And then finally, as I mentioned previously, finding number 9 is a new finding compared to what we discussed during the work session, but again, is included in the draft that you have. It does involve the nation's coronavirus relief fund. And as a result of this, there were employees that were charged to the Coronavirus Relief Fund that didn't meet the guidelines that Treasury has indicated that would be considered allowable. And so those are our 9 findings. And then the next step is at this point today to have the finalized audit available to the nation. And then the next step would then be to submit to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. Tasha, did you have anything to add?
Yes, thank you, Ryan. 2 things. One is that I wanted to point out that the final version of the financial statements that will be released later today does also include management's response to the findings and the corrective action plan that was prepared by the appropriate party that needs to respond to the finding, be that OOC, OMB, or a particular program. I also wanted to highlight that similar to the financial statements for those 15 programs that we're required to audit for grant compliance purposes, we do provide an opinion on those programs. And so I did want to reiterate that for 9 of the 15 programs, we did not report any findings and had a clean or unmodified opinion on those programs. And then based on the findings that Ryan discussed, we had a qualified opinion on those 6 programs that had compliance findings. I also would like to reiterate that there were a number of the findings that were reported in the prior year's financial statements that were corrected, so that although Ryan pointed out a few instances where there are findings that are being repeated, the bulk of the findings that were reported in the prior year were corrected and are not being repeated in the current year.
Thank you, Tasha. I believe that it concludes our summarized 30,000 foot level presentation. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Lurleen Tapahi with Office of Legislative Counsel. If I may get a chance to speak when you're ready, thank you.
Chair Hinio, are you still on the call? Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I can hear you, Peggy.
Okay, thank you. Chair Hinio, I believe the presentation is completed. Are you on the call still? I see that you are, but you're not responding. Vice Chair Smith. Oh, there you are, Chair Hinio. Yes, thank you.
Turn this off.
Yate, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yate, good afternoon. Yeah, Chairman, being the committee chair, out on the, our acting controller, Beth Begay, and also Moss Adam. My question is, do you have a hard copies available when it comes before the Navajo Committee and Navajo Nation Council pertains to your audit? And then plus, I need to have a copy of your 2019 audit report too. I haven't seen that official book audit report on 2019. Chair Edition Adikit, Chairman, yeah, thank you for the floor. Yeah, thank you very much.
Chair Hymio. Chair Hymio, this is Peggy. Can I make a comment? Thank you, Chair. To Delegate Yellowhair, we did have a copy of the 2019 audit, and it was sent to the Budget and Finance Committee by email last week. The Office of the Controller provided that to the committee. So I'll need to check the date and time of the email that I sent out to all of you. So I will get back with you on that personally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll look into it. Thank you very much. That will help me out too. Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Chair Hymio. This is Peggy. I have a question. Thank you, Chair Hymio. Given the fact that the Budget and Finance Committee was informed by Moss Adams that the finalized report will not be ready until this afternoon or evening, what do we do about the committee report? Do we add the finalized report once we receive it? But that would have to be amended to replace the draft that is attached to this audit report or audit legislation. Maybe Legislative Council Dana or Laureline might provide some guidance on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually working on a very quick, short amendment that will take me probably less than 5 minutes to email out. This amendment will provide for the situation that we're in right now. We do have an opportunity to switch out the exhibits when Moss Adams prepares the final documents. And that opportunity is at the Navajo Committee. So what I was going to say is something to the effect that If you take a look at page 2 of the legislation, page 2 of 0169-21, where at the top of the page, it says Moss Adams LLP, an independent auditor, has prepared the 2020 Independent Auditors Report for the Navajo Nation. And that paragraph A ends with the words on line 4. It ends with the words report when finalized. I was simply going to add such final report and other supporting final documents prepared by Moss Adams and provided at a later time shall be presented to the Nabakiati Committee for final review and approval when this legislation is presented to, or we can just end it there, shall be presented to the Nabakiati Committee for final approval, at which time such final documents shall be introduced as replacement exhibits, if that sounds good. And like I said, give me 2 minutes to email this out to everyone. And I think that would take care of the concern at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair Henio, if the Budget and Finance Committee is agreeable with that recommendation, there would be, if you want to go ahead and accept that recommendation, that's really the committee's decision to do so. Chair Henio, perhaps you could also defer to Department of Justice, let them weigh in on this amendment. Excuse me? Yes, there is. Before 10 o'clock, at least by, because I know their special meeting is at 10 o'clock, and we need to have everything together for that meeting, because this is it's just a single item one, I think, too, as well, for the audit. Chair Henio, may I make another comment?
Sure, this is Kristen Lowell. I am on the line.
I'll defer to Kristen. Thank you.
Okay, Chair. Thank you. Chair Henio, members of the committee, in looking at the resolution, The first finding reads that Moss Adams LLP, an independent auditor, has prepared the 2020 Independent Auditor's Report for the Navajo Nation. The 2020 financial statements are attached as Exhibit A in draft form and will be augmented by the 2020 Independent Auditor's Report when finalized. So if it's not finalized right now, but it will be finalized this afternoon after BFC votes on this, I'm not seeing that anything is required in the legislation to be changed, because there's nothing in here that affirmatively states the Budget and Finance Committee is going to do a certain action. So we don't have to pull that out of the legislation. So you could go with this the way it is, and then just let what the next step at NABI is to will be to change this paragraph A. So at some point, this paragraph A needs to be changed when the final report is prepared and ready to be swapped into Exhibit A. But as it reads right now, it's actually okay to go to NABI because we still have Exhibit A in draft form. And so when it gets to NABI, NABI can actually make the amendment that's needed to Section 2, Paragraph A. So that's my recommendation, is to make this amendment at NABI. Chair.
Yes, he could, Chair Henio, if you wanted to go ahead and do that. I can prepare the committee report accordingly.
Couldn't Shasala Hot Sunday. There's a Vice Chairman. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll take over then. Okay. Oh, Ako. Abila. Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. I'm available right now. And
Pro Tem Chair, yellow hair, Haja.
Hello?
Pro Tem Chair, yellow hair, are you still on the call?
He's in my office. This is Lurleen with Legislative Council. Can you hear us? Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure. Something happened to my computer there. I'm turning it over to Delegate Yellowhair. Thank you.
hello? Yeah, hey, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, Peggy, we can start now for any questions, Peggy, if we are in order. Hello? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Shitsui. Vice Chairman, yeah. Okay, let's call for the vote now. Yeah, for the questions, yeah, let's call for the vote.
Ramona, she votes green via text.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor back to Vice Chairman. Any questions? Shitsu, Honorable Smith? Yeah, the Vice Chairman, thank you very much. I guess we're done with this legislation. Thank you, my colleagues, Budget and Finance Committee. We're done, take care of this legislation, and I guess we're done. Go back to Peggy. Any questions, Peggy?
Thank you, Pro Tem Chair Yellow Hair. I guess you can pass the gavel back to Chair Hinio so we can complete the meeting. We have one more item to deal with.
Thank you very much, Advisory. Now I want to turn over the gavel back to Chairman Honorable Hinio. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Delegate Yellow Hair motion, Chairman. This is Delegate Yellow Hair, Chairman. Support what Mr. Oh, I'm sorry, Chairman. I'm sorry. I'd like to support Mr. Vice Chairman Honorable Smith Tuesday, anytime Tuesday, maybe at 10 o'clock would be my suggestions, unless somebody have a different time and dates. Until the Chairman. Yeah.